This time, your friend dropped by for a tactical cup of tea. Beautiful aroma. But of course the main goal of the visit is not the tea. You just got a new HK416 GBBR from WE and you want to show off. But wait, actually your friend also has the HK416. Plus he has a surefire flashlight. Plus PEG 15. Plus silencer. And his gun is HPA GBBR. His gun is better than yours, so this can end only one way. You need to have the same. But how to get it? Pray? Nah. Cast a spell, aura or a buff? No. Maybe get yourself a frog engineering conversion for WE AR15 HK416 series. That sounds like a solution. Hello and welcome to Frog Manual episode 3. I'm getting more and more questions where to get the conversions, so here is a surprise because this video will be about exactly that. We start off with the first one and this video is an assembly guide. Have a look, you will understand how the conversions work. And you will learn how to install it. You can see if you are up to that challenge. But if not, don't worry. Anyway, you can get your gun converted. So be patient, the video is very long and there will be next videos for each type of conversion I create with the same explanation. I thought about splitting this into a few shorter sections, maybe I'll do it in the future. For now, there is one big chunk of information. Let's get it on. Here you can see full contents of a conversion for an HK416 from WE. I'm saying HK416 because for AR15s it's a tiny bit different, although the whole process is the same. There is one more detail we need to take care of for the HK416. This is due to difference in the magwell shape, so there is different trigger guard for both these types. I will explain later when we will be modifying the gun where the difference is. So looking into the details, what we have here, as I mentioned, answering your questions in the comments, you get 3 functional magazines, Frog F mags for 5.56 caliber rifles, of course airsoft, and the capacity is 30 rounds with possibility to switch to 42 rounds plus this one extra BB that may be loaded. I explained this in the video about the magazines, please check it out. Of course you can get more of those magazines from Frog Engineering or print them yourself, it's published already in the internet. Then there is the Speedloader dedicated for those magazines. It will work with every single type of Frog Engineering magazine. It's also published, so you also can print this, but I believe you need only one. Unless you really want more, then you can get it from Frog Engineering or print this yourself. These magazines, just as the real steel, they will work with every single M4 magazine type gun. I mean AR15s, HK416s, but not only WE, also VFC and every single gun that I will convert in the future, they will use the exact same magazines. That's the goal here. We also have the heart of the gun, which is the conversion. This conversion requires 2 parts from your original gun. I will explain it during the assembly, which is the seal here on the top taken out from the magazine and the main valve. And the reason why I decided not to include them is to make it cheaper, because if you own a GBBR you have a magazine, so all these magazines that you have after making the conversion, installing it, they will be useless. So if you buy a new gun, for example, and you want to convert it, there is also a magazine included, so there is no point in having more seals or more valves, right? It's enough to take the one that comes with the gun and put it in here and save some money. And there is the supply line, this hose with a trigger guard already on it, and depending on the gun these trigger guards will be different, so it's important that you choose the proper set, if for example HK416 or M4 or whatever. There are tiny 3 screws that they will be needed for attaching the trigger guard to the gun. And by the way, trigger guard is on the hose, so this short amount of the hose on this side is exactly what you need in the gun to mount it, and the rest is just spare. During the assembly I'll explain what to do with it. Then there is the sleeve for hose protection. It's black, but you can also get a green one if you'd like, but as I will be assembling black unpainted gun, then I will put on the black sleeve. And there is the quick attachment US type connector that we will later put on the hose, and 3 pieces of heat shrinking tubes, so you will use them also during the assembly. Now what comes to my mind is that in general right now I'm providing 3 pieces because there is a big difference in the diameter between the connector and the hose, so I don't have a source of a tube that would shrink from this bigger diameter to the small one the way I want to. So there is one that will be put over the smaller diameter part of the connector, and then the big one put over the big diameter of the connector. So you use 2 at once, it's not the best idea, but if I find a heat shrinking tube that would be okay for both diameters, I will just include one. Yeah, so it's an intermediate solution, but it works. And regarding the conversion, right now it's silver. I already have some ideas how to improve them. The details on them might be a little different, so if your conversion looks a little different, then don't worry, because this manual is the same for all of them and those details will not affect the assembly, it will be the same. And the frog is not included. So the first thing you need is of course your GBBR, and in WE HK416D there is one important thing that we need to take care of, and this is the pistol grip. So you see that this pistol grip has this tiny little feature here on the bottom, and maybe you already understand that this trigger guard will be put here, and actually it will collide with that feature. So I don't like it. I can make a special trigger guard that would not collide with it, but there will be very limited space for the hose to go over it, and it will be interfering with the trigger, so that's not a solution. The next option would be to cut this step or this feature off and make a trigger guard that fits here to this pistol grip, which to me again it's not a solution, because I'm sure that like 95% of users of these guns will remove the pistol grips anyway to put some custom ones instead of them, and this is rare that the step is here, so they will not fit again to the trigger guard they have on the gun. So what I will do in every single custom gun I will build, I will replace this pistol grip with a standard A2 type 1, which will fit perfectly here with no step, and it will fit also to the trigger guard. If I am to build a custom gun for somebody, then just tell me what pistol grip you have, or you can provide the gun together with the pistol grip, mounted, not mounted, whatever way you'd like, and I'll make it work properly. But as I have no preference for the grip, as the gun is not for me, then I will replace it with this type. Having said that, there will be 4 parts for the assembly, and the first one will be the modification of the hop-up chamber, which is the most challenging, I believe. Then there will be a small modification in the upper receiver. There will be a modification we will do to the lower receiver. There will be a modification also to the conversion, meaning taking the parts out of the magazine and putting them into your conversion, like I already explained. So right now the video will be split into those 4 parts. And one more thing is that I will not show exactly how to disassemble the gun to, for example, take out the hop-up chamber, because it's different for AR15 there are many types of AR15s, or it might be a little different for different types of HKs, for example D and C version. So it's up to you to take it out. I believe if you want to take the challenge and actually mount the conversion to the gun, you obviously know how to remove the hop-up chamber. This should not be a problem. And if you don't know and you still feel enough confidence to try making the conversion by yourself, then in the internet you can find a lot of videos for disassembling and assembling the guns. I won't repeat it here because this video will be far too long. Everything you do to the gun, it's on your responsibility. So if you are not sure you can handle this, if you are afraid something will go wrong, or you don't have the proper tools or the skills, then better send your gun over to me. I will do it for you the professional way. It will be without any flaws and working without any issues, so you can be sure that the gun is reliable. As the first step, we will modify the hop-up chamber, and what you need to prepare is the hop-up chamber itself, and the best is to strip it of all additional components. You can leave only those two halves, and if you have these tiny tabs inside, you can leave them. We will also need the screw to attach those halves, but inside everything is taken out. You can actually squeeze in some tissue or paper towel to reduce the amount of cleanup you will do later on, but first let's have a look on what we will be doing. WE magazines have this weird design that the feeding lips are not starting at the very beginning of the magazine, so the chamber has this ramp that fits here to take the BBs when the bolt carrier group pushes them out. And this is the problem, because this feature is unique to WE. I haven't seen any other GBBR with it. Usually it's like here in Frog Engineering magazine that the feeding lips are at the very front of the magazine. So if I want to make something universal, it has to have the feeding lips here on the front, otherwise it won't fit into these other guns. Therefore, to combine these two things, we need to remove this feeding ramp. After it will be removed, we need to reprofile the ramp that will be left. So for this you need some tools. So first I'm gonna use a Dremel with a cutting tool. What I will do is I will take the chamber like this, take the Dremel tool, and I will leave some space when cutting this ramp off. So that later I can file it to make this even with the front surface of the chamber. The most important is not to damage the rest of the chamber, and it's better to leave more and then file it off than to cut too much and then have an issue. Because finally the goal will be to make this front surface of the chamber, this ring around the big one, and this inner one with the remains after the feeding lips to make it flat. Yeah, so don't overdo it, cut off less than everything and then file it down. I will now cut it off screen and show you the next stage, how the chamber will be looking and what I will be doing with it. This is how the chamber looks after removing the feeding ramp. So you can see, how can I show it? It's sticking out still a little, yeah, so I did not remove it to the absolute zero because I did not want to make any damage, as I said. So what I will do right now is I will take a flat file, and keeping those two halves together, you can screw them so that it's easier. I will be filing this down till the moment when I will notice that the file is leaving some marks around. Anyway, at the last step we will polish this face, so if we leave few scratches here and there, nothing bad will happen, but don't overdo it again. So I'm filing like this, and when I see that the scratches are appearing because the file starts hitting these walls, I will stop. So this is how my plugin looks. I squeezed the tissue, as I said, so all the debris won't go very deep inside, and then I will just pull it and reduce the amount of cleanup. So back to the filing. So now you can see this flat surface is more or less at the same level as the surface around. There are some scratches I did during the process, but it's not a problem. And now the last filing that we will do is for the ramp. So if you look at the angle on the ramp kind of flattens out at the end, which is bad. And right now if we measure the height from the bottom of the chamber, it's around 3.1 millimeters. It of course depends on the way how you cut it, yeah. But what you want to have is 2.5 millimeters. So what I will do is I will set it. I will scratch the chamber to indicate where it is. Don't worry, because of course later we will polish this surface nicely. And what I need to do is to take a round file now, and the diameter of the file has to be smaller than 6 millimeters. 6 millimeters would be actually the best, but I use a smaller one and it's fine. And what I want to do is I want to reshape this ramp that remains so that it goes all the way down to the line I just made, so 2.5 millimeters from the bottom of the chamber. In order to do it properly, I want to keep the top part of the ramp in its place, and I only want to extend it down. And if I notice that if I just extend the ramp down, I don't reach this line that I spoke about, then I will have to rotate this file a little more. So the important thing is that here you can see how the ramp goes. I want this front edge of the ramp stay in place, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna file it not to move it. So I'll be filing like this, and if this will not be enough, if I just make the proper level with the existing ramp, then I will rotate the file even more downwards, but keeping this top corner. You see this top corner right now, keeping this top corner in place. So I don't want to move it, I want it to stay. And it will be no problem if you wonder if the BBs won't get damaged because the slope is much steeper. I can tell you that if you do it properly to the dimensions I just mentioned, it will be fine. So I'm putting the chamber back together. I put it in and I start working with it. And on both sides I do the exact same thing. And when I do it, I like to let's say make a new surface to whole ramp so that there are no edges on it. And I know that I did it because I will strip the paint. It's painted black, so now I will be filing it. First I will make the shape on the top, and then if there will be any leftover of the black paint over the ramp, I will file it so that I remove this paint, that I make it flat but without the paint. Yeah, so let's go. And during the filing I will be keeping an eye on the rear, checking if this is symmetrical. So definitely during the process it won't be, because I will be moving a little here, but after it the goal is to have the shape symmetrical. And here I have it ready. So there are more scratches around, but don't worry about them. I don't know how much you can see because of the reflections, but I measured it with my caliper, it's symmetrical. So what you want to do is to keep these dimensions here the same, so around 2 millimeters. And as I said, here on the bottom it should be 2.5, so in my case it's 2.5, that's okay. And if I open it, you will notice there is tiny bit of black paint left because there is some sink mark on this side and on this side. This is not a problem. The important thing is that the silver part goes all the way up. There is one more filing that we need to do, and then we can go on and polish the thing. So right now I will show you where to file. So what we want to do is to add a chamfer here on the bottom of the chamber, because in the gun the magazine will be going like this and there is enough space for the filling lips to go into the proper position, but sometimes due to some clearances it might happen that the lips will collide with this edge. So if we add a chamfer here, it's much better because this will guide it to the proper position. There is less issues with wrong fitting of the magazine, not being able to push it or damaging the lips, whatever. You can see how wide the magazine is as wide as the remaining surface after the filling lips. So we want to chamfer it at least 1 millimeter looking here down. So I will be filing this edge like this until I go 1 millimeter below. So it's been filed, you can see the chamfer is here, and right now when I will be pushing in the magazine it will go through this chamfer. I'm gonna use this sandpaper that you put into the water. This is 1500 grain. So what we need to do is to make these edges that we created not sharp, round them, and obviously between the black and the silver. So here this edge, also this short edge here. From my experience I know that the corner here tends to damage the BBs, so we want it to be also rated, and the same goes for this input edge on the loading side. This one on top here we can polish it a little too, it will be okay. I've read that in order to use these materials properly you need to put them into water for many hours and then start to work. I don't know if this is really needed. In my case it always works without such things. So first I do the ramp. And I either put it on my finger and polish it pressing on with my finger, or the second thing what I do is I just fold it a few times to make it stiffer, and I use this stiff portion for polishing. The goal is of course to remove all the scratches. And right now the ramp has a nice mirror polish. This black portion stays there tiny bit, but the sink mark actually is kind of deep, so we can leave it this way. If you are able to remove it, then remove it, but don't overdo it. And you do the exact same thing on the other half of the chamber. Actually this area here is symmetrical, so I will record only one of it, but you need to do exactly the same on the other one. So right now the ramp is polished and a bit of the surroundings are polished, so I'll show you how I do the next step, which is dampening the sharp edges. So I fold the paper into a square so that the edge of it is stiff. I'm taking this edge and I'm using this edge, pulling it through this area that I want to make rounded, and it will go very quickly. So I'm pulling it, of course use some force from the finger to push it down, and you can see that this edge is already rounded, so that's good enough. And I do it for the edge here, for the edge here, and for that corner. So now it's nicely polished. There is no sharp edge here, or here, or here, or here. So here I have my two polished halves. There was no sink mark actually, so it's nice and silver. And all the edges are just on the other half, blended nicely, no sharp edges anymore. So what I need to do now is to finish it by polishing the rear side, the chamfer. I take another piece, put it on a flat surface like this, hold it down, and I put the chamber complete 2 halves and just scratch it. From now on it gets simple. You can see it still needs some more. So right now it's nicely polished. You can see there are some tiny leftovers here and there. You can remove it completely, but be aware that there are sink marks on the chamber, so it's highly likely that they are deeper, and maybe you are not even able to get so deep without removing bigger amount of material here. This step actually is aesthetical. This is some leftover after the manufacturing process. I don't know what this is, but that's always there on these chambers. So now I'm gonna polish the chamfer because I don't like how it's scratched, and then the final step I'm gonna finish this edge here. The chamfer looks fine. Now the last remaining thing is, when we were polishing this, we could create here a sharp edge where the BBs will go in, so we want to make sure it's not there, and if it is there, then remove it. So I'll again fold this to make it stiffer, and holding the whole chamber I will just polish it a bit here and there. And I'm done. How do I know it's okay? What I will need to do is to put the chamber back into the gun when everything is assembled and it's complete with the conversion inside, and then I will load the magazine with BBs and reload it without firing, just manually reload it, push through the chamber so that it falls out of the barrel. And I will be looking for the imprints, if those edges that we polished and removed and so on are leaving any marks on the BBs, because that's the goal, that the BBs go into the chamber and they will be seated properly. That's not a problem, but there should be no scratches on them or, you know, some damage. Right now what I need to do is to take this apart again, clean this out, remove that tissue. I need to clean this up in all the deep zones, areas, so that it's really okay, and I need to put it back to the gun. So after the step 4 I will show you how to test the gun if everything is okay. In case the BBs will be getting damaged, you will have to go back to this step, take out the chamber and repolish the edge causing it. The second step are the changes in the upper, and there will be 2 changes. First one is we need to make these 2 grooves here on the sides deeper. Right now they are around 2 millimeters deep, and we want them to be 4.5 millimeters deep. And regarding the size and the length, it's okay. So we just need to make it deeper. So I will use a Dremel milling tool to make it. And then the second change is here on the front. Right now we have a flat wall here under the chamber area, and we wanted to have the groove. This groove should be as wide as the hook attachment here, and it should be about 0.6 millimeters deep. So it would be 12.5 millimeters wide at least. It might be wider, does not have to be that precise. And the depth in the front direction should be, as I said, 0.6 millimeters. Regarding this hole, so we want this groove to connect this top surface with the hole. In other words, it should go all the way under the chamber. And here the first 2 cuts are done, you can see. So yeah, 4.5 millimeters deep, length as the original cut. And here is the second cut. I made it intentionally bigger. It makes no difference, and there is a lot of material here, so this way we need to clean this up from the debris, and the upper receiver is ready. So here is the completely reassembled upper. So here is the reassembled upper. So our cutouts here, the cutout in the front, and the chamber is modified. So you can see how the chamfer fits with this cutout. So if we slide the magazine into this cutout, the lips will slide off the chamfer and go in place where they should. So this is what we want. What we need to do is first take off this plastic part here on top, so 2 screws. And take this part off too. 2 screws. Then remove this nut. Okay, conversion is ready. And the first step for the magazine is to release the gas if there is any in it, so be sure that it's empty. Then we need to take the magazine and we will remove the seal from the top. So there are 2 screws, one here and one here. And we pull this part off. And here is the seal that we need. So we take it out. And let's put this aside. The remaining parts of the magazine, they are useless, so you can do with them whatever you want. I will just put them aside. And we need to take the valve out. There is a cutout here, so we lift it up and pull. And here there is a screw, so we unscrew it. And we push out the insert. And here is our valve. I have a special key for valve removal, so it's easy for me, but if you don't have it, it's not a big deal. You can take a flat screwdriver and push the valve in, and then put the screwdriver over it and just rotate. And when you remove the valve, you want to have a look here on the rear. Make sure that all 3 O-rings are in place. They are clean. You might wipe them out or something if they are not, and that they are not damaged. So having all these parts, we can start the assembly. So first let's put the valve inside, and again make sure that the hole here on the rear is clean. It should be, but you know, you're operating with this, so it can catch some dust or whatever. Then you put the valve in, and I do it like this. I rotate it backwards just to feel the thread catching, which I just felt. And right now I'm rotating this in screwing direction, and you screw it in until it's nice and tight. And next we put this seal in, and we want to make sure that it's not torn. Mine of course is new, straight out of the box, so it's a perfect example. But if you have a few magazines and you are about to choose which one to put there, be sure to choose the one that has least damage. And the sealing system on WE is, I would say, not so great. So one more thing that you might want to do is to put some Teflon tape around this wall here. I have a new seal, so for my case it's most likely useless to do it. But anyway, just to show you, in case you would have some leakage, I'll show you what I mean. I take a piece of Teflon tape and I bend it in half. And then I put it here around this wall, all the way around, 2 times around. I cut off the excess. I can bend the remaining part inwards like this, and then push this seal in here. As I said, most likely you won't need to do it if the seal is new and there is no damage to it. But that's just another possibility how to improve in case you have some leakage. And this assembled part goes back in here. And of course, without the Teflon tape it will be easier to insert this. If you have the Teflon like I do, you have to be careful. You have to push the Teflon into the part. In my case it came pretty nicely. So then the two small screws here and here go back. And while you screw them in, make sure that the heads are flush with this top surface. In my case it's okay. We can mount the conversion into the gun. So now the lower receiver. We have the complete assembly here. The first thing will be that we need to modify this steel plate here on top, because these two screws are the attachment points for the conversion, and this will obscure or take up the place where we want to put the conversion in. So we need this plate. We will cut a part of it off, and then we will push it down and secure it in place with the conversion and these two screws. So first let's take them out. So you simply undo the two screws. Now my two screws are out, so I will lift this. That's good, I can put this aside. And we want to make this plate shorter, so we will be using this side of it, and we want this to be 5.6 millimeters long from this face. So it will be hard to measure because there is this bend here on the side, so we can measure from the other side. So this whole element has 28 millimeters. We need to cut off 22.4 millimeters, and I'm gonna mark it with a scratch here. So I have my scratch, and I will cut this off with the same Dremel tool and the disc for cutting. I don't want to cut this with the scissors for steel because they will deform the plate and it has to be flat. I'm gonna cut it, but I will be removing the material from this side, of course, as this one I want to keep untouched. And after I cut this off, I will make sure that there are no sharp edges. I will file both top and bottom of the part. Be careful because this part is very small and it's made of steel. It's harder than you might think, so when you will be cutting this, it will heat up like crazy. So don't hold it in your hands, just clamp it into some holder or use some clippers, whatever, and cut this nicely. I will show you how it looks after being cut. And here I have this plate after the cutting, so 5.6. Actually, if you cut it shorter, it should not be a big deal. 5 millimeters would also work. The important part is that it must reach under the conversion, so 5 millimeters the minimum, and to fit under the conversion I advise 5.6. And I filed off the sharp edges, so that's okay. So now the plate, it goes back into these two slots here on the sides, so I need to push the hammer a little forward, then the plate over it, and it's done. So in the AR15, that's all modifications I need to do in the lower receiver. The rest is just replacing the parts. And in HK416 I need to do one more thing, and for this I will be milling. So I want to secure all the parts in the gun so that they will not get clamped up with the debris from that milling. So I will remove everything and use only the lower assembly. Okay, so I have the empty receiver, that's enough. And one thing you can notice is that actually here under the trigger guard the mag well is longer. It's not ending at the same level as the trigger guard as in a regular AR15s, but it's a little longer, and this is an issue for us because our magazines, which are copies of the real ones, have this rear portion here, and if I insert them this gets blocked. So there are two options what you can do about this, because the magazine is still not locked, yeah? So it still can move and it does not reach the final position because this mag well is too long. I don't know why they did it. HKs from VFC don't have it, AR15s from WE or VFC don't have it. Here they have this weird feature. For comparison, this is an M4 from WE, no problem. This is an HK from VFC, no problem. And this is an AR15 from VFC, also no problem. This is another HK, no problem. Even the L85, no problem. Or a CATS PDW from WE, also no problem. So there are two things you can do. Either you can file this or cut this part of the magazine off, which to me is not really a solution. Or you can do what I'm about to do. You can mill some aluminium out of this magwell so that there is enough space for this feature to go in. In the models I uploaded for you in the magazine video, I already reduced the size of this tab to be as small as possible, not to create this issue so much. So there are two choices. Either you need to modify this magazine or you need to do what I will do now. So looking on the bottom, we will be removing this aluminium from here and here in the rectangular shape. And first I'll do it, I'll show you the result and I give you the dimensions after I do it, after I finish. So let's go. It is 21 millimeters wide, and here it might look a little risky to you because it's on the border, but in the newer magazines you don't need to do it that deep. So right now it's 5.5 millimeters, and as I said, in the new magazine this tab is shorter and the published magazine, so you don't need to do it so much. You can go like millimeter less, and the depth is 3 millimeters. So now when I put in the magazine, so you can see it goes nicely into the magwell and there is no sign of rework if you look from the outside. So this is exactly what we need. So the magazine is locked. I already removed the pistol grip, which would be normally the next step to remove it. So generally you take your gun, there will be a screw in the pistol grip deep down. Depending on the gun and the pistol grip it might look a little different, but the screw is always in the same place. You undo it and you pull it off. So the screw is here, you can see it now. And depending if you remove the trigger box or not, there will be the spring and the pin. You don't need to remove this in other guns. I removed it only for this cutting. So if we are already here, then let's remove the trigger guard. I just hit it here from this side. Sometimes the pin goes in from this side, sometimes it goes in from that side. Most likely you will need to push it from the other side. So here is the pin, and here on this side there is a button that we need to push and then pull the trigger guard out, but it might require some force. So I have my trigger group back in the gun, and now we are gonna assemble the conversion to this. So remember these two holes, we will be attaching the conversion to them. But first what we will do is we will take our hose with the trigger guard and we slide the nut over it, and then we will put this part on. And here be careful, so you need to put it with this chamfer facing the direction of the shorter hose, so like this. And this nut should easily go through, so no problem. And I push this hose onto this part here. Then I pull the nut through the plastic part and I screw this. You need to tighten this down. It does not require a lot of force. Do it like this. And we can put this part back like that. Throw in these two screws and screw them back. Everything's ready, we can drop this into the gun. We put the hose through the magazine well, and the conversion goes here on top. And at first this hose will try to stay straight, so it will be more difficult for us to do, but it's definitely doable. And here we align the holes with the holes in the trigger block underneath, and we put those screws that were holding the original plate. And the conversion is in place. Okay, so now test if this works. So the valve knocker should go forward when I pull the trigger. Obviously it happened, and I can actually test this by blowing air into the hose. It should go through. And right now I pull the hammer back, and the valve knocker should jump back just like it did. And again I can test by blowing into the other end of the hose, and the air should not go through now. So I cannot blow through, so it's okay. Now what we need to do is to take the pistol grip and make a hole here in the front so that we can put the hose through it. And you can see that this dimension here is usually around 8 millimeters. The hose is 6 millimeters in diameter. So you want to drill in the middle, of course, and I will use a 7 millimeter drill, so to give some clearance for the hose so that it's not so tight, but you might experiment and do it a little differently. Yeah, so I'll just take a regular drill and I will drill through. So the pistol grip has a hole drilled, that's okay. We will assemble it now, and remember about the spring and the pin for fire selector, whatever pistol grip you decide to use. And I will put the screw first, because then the hose will go over it, so this way it's a little easier. And now I will put the hose in. And remember, when you are maneuvering with the hose, don't break it. So you can bend it, but don't break it 90 degrees or something, because then it will cut off the air supply, and you will never know if this is broken again, or you straighten it out and it stays like this. So I'm pulling this to the position near the trigger guard, and then I'm putting both at once onto the gun. So the pistol grips goes here and the trigger guard goes here, and it will be very springy, so you have to really hold it properly and screw the pistol grip in. I'm gonna do this off screen because I need some space to maneuver with my hands and I cannot do it under the camera. So this is assembled. The next step will be the trigger guard assembly. So we take the tiny screws that were included, and there are two M3 screws and one M2.5 screw. The M2.5 will go to the front hole and the M3 go to the rear hole on this and the other side. And when you are screwing them in, you would like probably to add some glue because they might fall out because of the vibration, and you don't want this. I have it with some glue. I push in the trigger guard and put in the screw. And when screwing in these screws, you want to make them flush with the surface of the receiver here or here, because if you overdo it, it will start to push on the hose and restrict the airflow. The same for the rear screws. The next step is on the other side, and it's bolt catch. So you can see there, here there is the lever for the bolt catch. You can move it, it should be loose. And you see there is this screw, and this is because in different guns the different height might be required. So one thing, steel on steel will wear out less, and the second thing, with screw you can actually adjust it to the proper height of your bolt catch. Of course, with a flat screwdriver you can rotate it. The important thing is that the bolt catch, while on the screw, it will move like this. So you cannot make the groove in the screw in the parallel axis to the bore, because the bolt catch can get caught on that. So whenever you set it, make always sure that it's set like in my case, meaning perpendicular to the bore, right? That's okay. And regarding the height, we need to put in the bolt catch with the spring. So the spring goes in, The lever goes in carefully for that conversion lever, and we don't need to push it all the way, just to make an access for the bolt catch to stay in proper place. And right now, when we look into this gap, we want to have a position that when the bolt catch pushes down, because there is that spring, it touches to the screw head. In my case, it touches, it looks okay. But in your case, if it's too low or too high, you can adjust this with the screw. And after adjusting it, remember to add some glue under the head of the screw, because again, this will vibrate, this will move, and for sure it will set in a different height. One more thing, you want to make sure that the bottom surface where the screw pushes on the bolt catch lever is actually flat or polished, because sometimes they are extremely rough, sometimes they have some marks after milling. In my case, actually it's flat, so that's okay, I can just put it on and I don't need to do anything with it. In case it would be rough, as I said, you would need to polish this to make it really smooth. And for this to work properly, it's good to add a bit of Teflon grease on the head of that screw so that it slides nicely on the bolt catch lever. It will make it more durable. And as a test, we can put the magazine in, and you see that right now the orange follower is on the top, and if I push the bolt catch, it goes down, and I release it, so it goes up and the bolt catch goes out. That's the correct behavior. So in my case, it looks like there are no issues, and it's enough to just drop it in and it's fine. So I remove the magazine now. I already said that the magazines are really made to fit, and they might be tight at the first, but if you will use them, one thing, they will shrink, because this resin material shrinks over time, and second thing, it will break in and be easier to use. If it's really hard to put them into the magwell, you can see where are the marks from the paint from the inside of the magwell left on the magazine when you use it, and you can just file it a bit in the magwell. So the lower receiver is complete. We can now reapply the grease whenever needed, or some oil. And the new thing is that bolt catch screw here, where we put a bit of Teflon grease on the top of the screw, so most likely you need to remove the bolt catch to do it, or push it in with the screwdriver. And here on this we can spray a little silicone oil, it will help. The rest of the conversion does not require any lubing, so the trigger mechanism is the only thing you need to take care of. Of course, the buffer, the spring, the usual stuff. Now let's relube the gun and we will test the magazine in order to see if there is no issue that the follower is too high for whatever reason. You can pull the slide or the bolt carrier group back and see if in the smooth here, the last stage when the nozzle goes over the feeding lips, if it gets caught on the follower. In my case, there is no problem, it goes easily over it. Then what you want to do is to pull it completely back. There should be a nice audible click when the bolt carrier group goes behind the bolt catch, which was there, yeah, so you've heard it. And of course it should lock, which it does. Let's do it again. And the last thing, if I remove the magazine and I pull the handle back, the bolt catch should be released. And the thing that we will test during the test of the chamber is you can push in one BB here, and when you reload the gun, the BB should go into the chamber, and if you reload the gun again, then the bolt should lock to the back. But we will do it multiple times, testing the chamber. I'm taking the magazine, empty one of course. I'm pushing in single BB, and on the top I will make a mark. And here on top I will make a mark, an arrow. So now I will put the magazine back into the gun, of course leave it a moment to dry out. Now I will put this back into the gun, and this arrow will indicate what was the original orientation of the BB in the feeding lips. So what I am looking for is damage on the BB. Of course, you make sure that the BB you are putting in is undamaged in the first place. So now I will take the magazine and load it into the gun. The hop-up has to be set to 0. And the BB is there waiting. And I will press the bolt catch. So the gun loaded itself. And right now I'm pulling the bolt carrier group back. Of course it should lock. And using some small tool I will push the BB through the chamber so that it leaves. That's why I want hop up to 0, so that there is no resistance. And I take that BB with that arrow and I look for any damage. So if there will be any damage, most likely it will be here under the arrow on the direction it indicates, because the BB is pushed out this way from the lips and hits on the chamber. So in my case there is no damage, because of course I know how to assemble these chambers. I did it more than once, so it's first time okay. If you have any detention, any scratch, any damage, then you need to look where the damage is on the BB and try fitting it into the chamber with the orientation given by the arrow, like this. You know the method, where it comes from. This means that in this area you need to do some more polishing. One important and maybe funny note: actually many GBBRs in stock, they damage the BBs because they have those sharp edges in the feeding ramps and you don't even know it. People say that some of the GBBRs shoot badly, some shoot well, and this is one of the factors. Of course, one BB is not enough. I recommend to do it at least 10 or 20 times. And if you plan on using some soft BBs, then do the test on the softer ones that you will use, because they have to be undamaged, right? In my case I will do it of course more times, but off screen this video would be too long. This pin can be pushed all the way in and we will finish the hose. So you can see that you have a piece of the cover for the hose, black or green, in this case black. You have an QD connector, American version or US version, so you remove the nut again. So now you take the smallest heat shrinking tube, you put it over this cover for the hose, and it has to be melted so that the parts of it go outwards, because the heat shrinking tube has to have something on the hose to catch, so it will catch against this hard molten part. I will put this onto the hose like this. Then I will put those remaining 2 heat shrinking tubes, and this is far too long. I just attach the excess so that you are okay with it, but actually I will use half of it, so I will cut the rest off. And you need to put this on the hose the same way and put the nut on. So the hose is much longer than the sleeve is. This is some spare in case something went wrong during the assembly. And how I'm gonna do it is I want to put the heat shrinking tube here like this. I will shrink it in this position. So you can see it shrunk, and there is this wider piece here on the molten part of the sleeve. So this way the sleeve will not come out from underneath that shrinking tube. And I'm gonna put a little bit of glue dip inside on the hose and then slide it. You see it moves. I will slide it over this glue to hold it in a position. Okay, it's done. Now I can stretch the cover, and now it's up to you how long you want this to be. I will leave it as it is. So in this case it's around 20 centimeters. Usually I do 15, but okay, let's do an exception. And this end interests us now because, as I said, this is longer than needed. So what we will do is we stretch nicely the sleeve so that it's not loose, and it should end just before the nut here. And when the nut ends, I will take 2 millimeters more and I will cut the rest of the hose. Now I can move it back and I push the connector over here. I can screw the nut. Now let's extend the sleeve nicely till the end. It touches to the nut. So I put this shrinking tube here. And the last thing is this big one. So I push the big one over the connector. And again, I heat it up to shrink it. So it looks okay now. Of course, I covered the connection to the QD, so I need to cut this off. And it's ready. So what is left? Just connect the pressure and test if it shoots. So the next thing we will do is we will check how the gun shoots. Function check. Maybe you remember what I said about connecting the HPA to the VFC and WE guns. So in older WEs you have the European type of safety, meaning that if the gun is not cocked, you can put on safe, but then you are not able to cock it. And in the newer ones, or with the Array Tech trigger group, it's the American type of safety, meaning that you cannot put it on safe unless the gun is cocked. In our case, it has some importance because depending on this, we can connect the pressure. We only connect the pressure when the gun is cocked, otherwise it will shoot immediately. Therefore, I take the gun, I make sure that it's cocked, and I connect the pressure. The magazine is empty, so the bolt carrier group should lock back. Now, without the magazine, it will not lock back. Let's see full auto. Some more single shots. Empty magazine. So you see everything works. Right now we'll chrono the gun, and WE has a low power rating but very high rate of fire, and VFC guns is the other way around, so they have much higher output and lower rate of fire. So in this case it will be around 1 joules on 140 psi. The maximum you can put the conversion on is 150 psi, so you are able to reach around 1.1 joules, but it depends highly on the type of regulator you are using. I will be using Minecraft HRR. It's a cheaper variant than the red line. And of course, this is fully stock gun apart from the conversion, so you can modify it. You can put a tight bore barrel in it. You can modify the hop-up backing, you can modify the NPAS, right now there is none. You can also put a high flow valve into the conversion. There are many possibilities, the same way you would tune a regular GBBR, and all of this will increase the FPS. So in this barrel length, because barrel length of course also is of big importance, so in this barrel length you can reach up to 2.1, 2.2 joules, depending on the weight of the BBs, because of course this also has influence. So in this case 0.36, and for chronoing right now I will use 0.28, because these will be the regular BBs I would use for a CQB gun with a flat or R-hop, and the stock hop-up backing for this gun is that R-hop type, although I recommend to change it because it's really not the best one. So I will load the magazine and let's go to the chrono. So this is all for today's episode of Frog Manual. Thank you so much for your time. It was a long one. I hope it clarified a lot of things regarding the conversions, how they work. And right now they are available. If you want to get one, please contact me for the details. There will be series of guns like this one also available. So again, if you like to get one, please contact me. The first ones, as you see, are the WE, so the VFC will follow soon. If you have any questions, then please ask. I'll try to respond to every single one. There are not so many yet, so I can keep up. If you don't feel like you are skilled enough to do this conversion on your own, you can always, again, contact me and send your gun over here. This way I can put the conversion in, do some additional adjustments and so on. So when you get the gun, it's fully functional and optimized. That's enough for today. Thank you. Subscribe, like, share, comment, and don't miss the next episodes coming soon. And may the power of GBBR be with you.